Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Four Corners podcast. My apologies. My name's Colin.
Mike Bradley over here.
Scott?
And we are joined by a special guest today. Scott?
Yes, today we have the honor of having Impact's very own Kongo Kong. He's been in professional wrestling for a very long time, and he has entertained thousands of people, won several titles, and he's helped define or redefine the position of being a big man in professional wrestling. I would compare him to a modern-day Vader. I've had the pleasure of knowing Steve for many, many years, and he is a very kind-hearted person in and out of the ring. I mean, even though when he's in there, he's one of the most fearsome competitors you would ever want to come across. But today, we're going to sit down and talk with Steve Wilson. I turn the floor over to Steve.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey, how's it doing?
Going good.
Good. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for joining us. So we got a few questions. I figured we would just go around and ask you one at a time. Colin, go ahead and start first here.
Well, I've noticed something. One of the biggest things that is interesting about Impact is their use of the six-sided ring. What are some of the differences using a six-sided ring versus a four-sided ring?
I would say more options. Obviously, with two more ropes and two more turnbuckles, it's a bit tricky to navigate at first, but it's not really hard. I preferred the six-sided ring.
Wow.
To me, it made me feel like when I was there, I was somewhere special, as opposed to just another wrestling show. I've been wrestling in a four-sided wrestling ring my entire career, so having a six-sided ring was something different. It was something to look forward to.
Well, that's a pretty good answer. I actually never thought of it that way. I mean, you see so many four-sided rings, and I think Impact's the first that's ever used a six-sided ring, I believe.
Yeah.
Maybe in America. I believe one of the promotions in Mexico uses it quite a bit.
Did you have a chance to work for that promotion down there?
No, not yet. And actually, if I remember correctly, there was a six-sided ring in No Holds Barred, the movie.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, damn. Yeah, there is.
Take me back.
Interesting.
Well, yeah, I always thought Impact had the only one.
Maybe that's where they got it from.
Nope.
Maybe we're too
Yeah,
American.
they were the first. They were the ones to make it popular.
That they have, and I think that's one of the nice things that helps differentiate them from other wrestling promotions is immediately when you turn on, you would see that six-sided ring, and you're like, well, this is already something different. There's a new element to each match.
Exactly. It made it more interesting to me, like what kind of more stunts or different situations can you find yourself in with that type of ring. The only thing I really didn't like about it was like the placement of the ring stairs. You always had to be cognizant of where that was, because you couldn't go out on that side because it sat in the middle of the ropes as opposed to the ring steps that sit on the corner now.
Yeah, that was one of the things. Is that it's actually lined up like dead center, like on the back side of the ring, so it's not on a corner or anything. So I was noticing that too. It could be a little bit hairy if you get thrown out of the ring accidentally on that side, because you're not going to take a nice smooth bump.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Mike, what was your question?
All right, so over the years that if you have been in the game, what is your preference when working? Is it heel or face? Which one do you feel more comfortable in?
Honestly, I think I'm a natural babyface, and I think even when I've been a heel, for any extended period of time, I ended up turning babyface because the fans start to appreciate me more than hate me, and it's just kind of been how it is, I guess. Since since I've been wrestling, even as Osiris, that was the thing. The fans would end up turning me before there was any sort of natural progression towards a face or heel turn.
Yeah, I second that because I remember when we were working in BMF and you took the title off of Billy Rock. I was the referee for that match, and Billy got absolutely destroyed. You bloodied him. You beat the crap out of him, and the fans were still behind you even through all of that. And Billy Rock was a massive babyface.
Ultimate babyface in Indiana.
And Osiris back then was getting a huge pop even for taking out Billy Rock. And the fans,
Right.
they just respected you so much that, I mean, the heel turn was temporary. I think you were only heel in BMF for, what, a couple of months, and that was it?
Yeah, pretty much. And then, they turned me babyface.
When you're over, you're over.
He would get massive pops when he would come out. It was amazing just to sit back and watch the crowd because they were very connected. When his music hit, the kids would stand up. They would run to the entrance just to get some high fives. And, I mean, if you were going to type up a premier babyface, that's the reaction that you would want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so weird. You think with the gimmick I have now that it would be the opposite, but it's not. Like, the kids are my biggest supporters, so, like, it's so weird. I can go out and I can be the biggest, meanest, nasty heel, and they still, want my autograph or want to high-five me and try to get a conversation out of me, even though while I'm in pain, I don't talk. It's the funniest thing. I remember even missing somebody, and I was still considered a heel at the time, but they were cheering me, and so I was like, okay, I got to do something dirty to try to see if I can get them back to not liking me. And so I missed a guy, and Muda missed, and like there was a brief pause. And then all of a sudden you're, I was like, all right, like short of stabbing this guy, it's probably not going to happen me as a heel, so whatever.
One of the questions I have is, I know that you're very passionate about professional wrestling, but outside of the ring, what are some things that you're really passionate about doing? Maybe hobbies or just stuff to relax and take your mind off the business for a little bit?
Well, that's a pretty interesting question because when I'm not wrestling, I'm usually making wrestling gear or sleep. That's pretty much my life anymore. I do get to enjoy some video games now and then. My favorite game of all time apparently is NCAA college football for Xbox 360. They stopped making it back in 2014, I want to say, but like I still play that version, even though I had my dad buy me an Xbox One for Christmas, with Madden, and it's just not the same. It's not college football, so I'd rather play the NCAA. It's funny. Then also when I can, I go watch a movie, and actually I just left the movies watching, was it 1517 to Paris?
Oh, that looks like a good movie. I've been wanting to see that.
Yeah, very, very good movie. I was surprised at how good it was, and let's just say my allergies were all acting up while I was in there.
I've been there. Toy Story did it for me.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed to say.
Don't be ashamed. We were all sad in that movie. Yeah. That movie, I think, actually the people that were involved with the event, because it's a true story, the people that were involved in that event actually were acting in the movie. I think they acted as themselves. I
Oh,
I
that's
don't
interesting.
actually know for sure. I could look that up, but I'm pretty sure that's part of it.
On the gear thing, do you still do you have a website for that in case there's any workers out there looking to get some custom gear by you?
I mean, realistically, you can hit me up on any of my social medias. On Twitter, it's at Real Kongo Kong. On Instagram, it's Kongo Cyrus 78. One word. On Facebook, you can either type in Juggernaut Gear by Osiris, or Kongo Kong, or Steve Wilson, and find me that way and shoot me a message. Let me know what you need, and more likely than not, I'll be able to help you.
Listen, I remember you did a pair for me a few years ago, and I still have them to this day. They held up really well. Everything was perfect how I ordered it. You went above and beyond on them, and honestly, it's probably one of my favorite pairs of tights.
Appreciate that.
Not a problem. Colin, what's your next question here?
All right. So you've been in the business for quite a while, and I've known Scott for a while, and he's told me a lot of stories about you. Unfortunately, this story would have been a little bit better, or this question would have been a little bit better if Steven would have been here, but he had business to take care of. So they informed me that you actually tagged with Steven on the independent scene. So what was it like tagging with him?
We were called Biggie Smalls.
Best name ever.
It was a lot of fun. It was a blast. It was a chance to get Steven out there and get him acclimated to wrestling. Better than just putting him in situations where being such a small guy where he had no choice but to get his butt beat. This way, we could set him up for success, I guess, in a way. And it was a fun time, and I feel like I gained really a lifelong friend in Steve. So, yeah, it was a blast. It was a lot of fun to do that. And I remember not telling him that we were going to win the tag team titles at BMF. And the look on his face when he got the pin, it was just so funny because I was just hanging outside the ring and kind of watching it. So he gets the pin and he's looking like, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? It just comes on. And so I had to hop in the ring like, hey, congratulations, kid. And he's like, oh, you dirty bastard.
Yeah, for those who haven't actually met Steven, obviously he's been on the first 3 podcasts. To compare the size, if you've ever seen Kongo Kong wrestle, he's a large man. Steven is 5'4" and like $140 maybe, I think tops.
Holding a 40-pound weight.
Yeah. So the differences in size is it's amazing.
But I think the difference is what got them separated from a lot of the tag teams at the time. We were kind of short on tag teams back then. It was the Uprising with Hadley and Ross, which were super over. Great group of heels. And then you had Section 8, and then they were bringing guys in for Biggie Smalls, but Biggie Smalls was getting probably the best face reaction that you could want coming out.
How could you not with that name? It's brilliant.
Did you come up with that?
I don't think I did. I think Martin Fernandez did.
Of course he did.
Oh,
He's
man.
a genius.
Fern is... He is a great mind.
The Board of Education?
Yeah.
Come on.
I remember when I came back from my jaw being broke, and my first match back was against Osiris and Hillbilly Jed. And I felt really safe going into that match because I knew I was in there with 2 people that would take care of me. And O had me in the corner, and he was getting ready to do something. He's like, oh my God, I forgot your face. He gives me this massive suplex out of the corner. And I mean, it felt really good to take that first bump, but he was extremely gentle, and he took really good care of me in the ring. And any butterflies I had went away after I knew that I was going to be in the ring with somebody that was the quality of Osiris.
I appreciate that.
Not a problem, buddy. Mike, what do you got for you? Oh, I'm sorry. What'd you say?
It's all about the illusion of it. It's all about, making it look like it's devastating and hurting without it actually being devastating and hurting.
Yeah, I've actually seen Scott do a spine buster. I watched one of his matches, and it looked good. It looked really good, and from what Steven said, he's like, no, Scott does it really, really well. Like he does. I've seen matches of his. He does spine busters as one of his moves, and it looks great. So I mean, that's the best thing you can do in a match is make sure you don't actually hurt the person you're wrestling.
Make it look like they're destroyed.
Yeah.
So, Steve, I've noticed lately, speaking of working with men of smaller stature, how is it like working with Jimmy Jacobs, the infamous man from the Bullet Club picture?
The funny part about that is that Jimmy and I broke in at the same time at the same place, so we were training together back in right around 1998, 99 in Holland, Michigan, and so we've known each other for years, been friends for years, and for us to get on TV together like that,
It's got to be awesome.
wrestling full circle. And to quote Greg the Hammer Valentine, where he says, I've sold out Madison Square Garden, and now I'm wrestling in the backyard. Everything in wrestling comes full circle. So whether that circle goes backwards or it goes forward, it just depends, I guess. In this case, the circle went forward because we used to tag team. And so on Twitter somewhere, there's a picture of us, Big Bully, Jimmy Jacobs, and Osiris as a tag team, and then there's a picture 20 years later of us, in Impact.
That's pretty awesome that you guys got to come full circle like that. Was there anyone else notable in your training class? I think Scott has told me a little bit about it, but
nobody that really, I guess, made it far. There's some guys that did some things on the indies, I guess. But we knew like Cole Cabana before he got really popular. Like when he first started, he would make trips up every once in a while and come wrestle with us. And I believe even CM Punk. I had met him at a couple of indie shows in Michigan, excuse me. At that point, and it was all before their big rise, and I'd ended up leaving that area and coming down to Indiana to play college football and to get my education. But once I got back into wrestling, met back up with Jimmy, and he had found his way into Ring of Honor and was going everywhere and doing everything and making his path successful, and I thought that was pretty awesome.
I've really enjoyed a lot of Jimmy's stuff in ROH, especially the Ballad of Lacey. That was a really good angle that he was going with in ROH. You don't really get to see a whole lot of minds like Jimmy, I think, in this day and age. He kind of looks at the business different than most people. And I've seen him do a couple of seminars. I believe Brian brought him into BMF once to speak to some of the rookies. And somebody like that it's really important to get their take on it because it's a fresh view. It's a fresh set of eyes on the same thing, which I think could be very influential to somebody just getting in.
Absolutely. He actually works on the creative team at Impact, and I figured, once he left WWE, that if he landed in Impact, that that would be his main role or whatever. I didn't know that they were putting him with me until I actually got up to Ottawa during that set of tapings. And he walks up and he says to me, they're putting this together, right? And I was just thinking to myself, wow, that's that's going to be awesome. That's the kind of thing that a character like mine needs, a good mouthpiece, somebody to drive those promos home and make people want to watch, make them want to tune in the next week to see what happens.
I would say it's a perfect pairing. I mean, I would compare you guys to Impact's version of Lesnar and Paul Heyman. I mean, you've got a lot of physical gifts that you bring to the ring, and Jimmy on a microphone is absolute gold.
I was standing in the ring with him and James Mitchell, a business manager, and it was easily like one of the toughest times to not smile and mark out for a promo that I've ever had.
It's got to be
Like
surreal.
the two of them going back and forth. It hasn't aired yet, but the two of them going back and forth over the mic was just simply gold, and I was honored to be a part of that.
Well, to kind of lead into my next question for you, this is a two-parter. What is your favorite match that you've wrestled, and what is your favorite match that you have seen?
Ooh. See, favorite match that I wrestled had to be, say, back in 2007. I wrestled Hillbilly Jed in a 2 out of 3 falls. Actually 2 out of 3 stages of insanity match. Where the first match was a dog collar match, full corner dog collar match. Second match was fans bring the weapons, and then the third match was a fans strap match. So between two guys that weighing close to 400 pounds, if not over 400 pounds, we managed to go out there and for a full 50 plus minutes, entertain the fans and have the fans on their feet by the end of the match. Definitely one of my most memorable moments, I guess, matches in my career, even being that far back. And then I guess matches that one of the best matches I've seen. For me, the most enjoyable ones were like Sting and Ric Flair, or Sting and Vader, like the stories that they would tell when they wrestled, versus the matches that you see these days where all it is a bunch of guys bouncing off the ropes and doing flips, and there's no real selling or time for crowds to react or anything like that.
I believe I was watching a YouTube podcast with Jim Cornette, and he had said that there were some guys in the business that their work was so fast, and I mean, they weren't bad workers, but their work was so fast that you didn't really get a chance to appreciate what just happened because they would move so quickly into the next set of moves or just next spot of the match that you didn't really have a chance to chew on that moment.
That's most of what you see these days. You go to these feds where they have the smart fans or the internet marks or whatever you want to call them that like the fast-paced stuff. But the problem with that is that the people who aren't privy to all that insider knowledge, they can't register stuff like that. The casual fans, they can't register stuff like that because everything happens so fast. By the time they're looking over to their neighbor to say, hey, did you see that? There's 10 other moves that just happened, and there's no story there. There's two guys basically going out and doing a dance. They're not wrestling. It's not an epic tale of good versus evil, in my opinion. I just think wrestling should have certain elements to it, and it's good to have some matches that are like that. But like every match on the card shouldn't have 50 false finishes. You shouldn't be kicking out of 12 Canadian destroyer power drivers and 2 moonsaults and all the everybody else's finishers and all that crap. Like there has to be like a hierarchy to the story that you're telling.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many matches I've seen where it's literally like there's no such thing as a protected finisher anymore. It seems like everything is, oh yeah, I did this great move that normally would put down a person 10 years ago, but now it takes three of them, and then you have to do it off the top rope or through a table just to get it to actually work. And half the time, even that doesn't work.
Yeah, I was just making that same point to somebody this weekend. I said, "Here, let me hit this really really cool move so you can kick out of it and make me look weak."
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like some of the best moves are when you do one or two big power moves. Back to what he was talking about, and you do like a double clothesline, and then you lay out for 10 seconds or 15 seconds so that people can appreciate, some of the stuff they've seen, and then you get up and go and do other stuff.
Yeah, there has to be some sort of spacing there.
Yeah.
Between those spots. That way it doesn't look like it's a big dance. It doesn't look choreographed or rehearsed, and it looks more like it's a fight.
Well, I guess I'm going to hammer you with two questions back to back. What feud has been your favorite since joining Impact, and what feud are you most looking forward to?
So far, it's been the Abyss feud, which again, all of it hasn't aired yet, so I won't be going into any detail about that.
Aww.
But you just have to tune in and watch. And what was the second question?
What feud are you most looking forward to?
Well, it was Bobby Lashley, but that's not going to happen now. EC3 was another one, but that's not going to happen now. Probably whichever one puts me in the main event for the title.
I do think one match that I personally would like to see on a Bound for Glory would be you versus Johnny Mundo. I think that would be an excellent match, and definitely a match worthy of Bound for Glory, which is your guys' the granddaddy of them all.
Well, keep talking. You might get your wish.
It would be great.
We'll just say that there was some interaction between he and I at the last taping. So, yeah, we'll see what comes of it.
Don't want to read any more into that without spoiling anything. So,
right.
Which, by the way, everybody listening, make sure that you do watch Impact Wrestling every Thursday on Pop TV at 8/7 Central. I wanted to get that in there. I can't thank them enough for getting you where I think you've always belonged, and that's into a major federation. You've always had the talent, and you've definitely had a level head, and you've been an amazing role model to guys in the locker room. When you were in BMF, there's, I think, 3 training classes in the time you were there that went through. And at some point, you talked to somebody in each one of those classes, and you pointed out what they were doing wrong and what could be improved. And that's a presence that's very important to the locker room, and I think Impact's very lucky to have that.
Well, thank you. I'm a firm believer in I guess paying it forward. I've gotten to witness the so-called veterans, who would snub the young guys, and they wouldn't try to pass on any information to them, and it felt like they were just trying to protect their so-called spot as opposed to helping pro wrestling survive, and I feel like if I don't help this next generation, or these generations coming up, that then, wrestling will lose even more of its mystique, and pretty soon, nobody would be able to make any money off of it. So, just kind of my take on it is that I have to pay it forward or pay it back, or, some of the knowledge that I've learned, I have to pass on, and some people, they learn by hearing other people talk, and some people, they have to bump their own heads. But, if I at least put it out there, then it's out of my hands at that point, and I've put forth my effort to help this business grow and to go on.
I honestly, God, Steve, I wish there was 1,000 more of you in this business, because I mean, I read a lot of the dirt sheets and all the tea leaves of the sites, and you hear about all these incidents and altercations in the back, and guys get in trouble outside the ring, just making poor decisions. If you could give a piece of advice to some of the younger guys to kind of grasp onto and to maybe prevent them from making a poor decision outside of the ring, what would you say?
I'd say find a vet that's, he doesn't have to be the most successful vet, but he has to be somebody who is an example, who is a leader, who does travel, wider than, just your typical independent region, or independent circuits, I guess. You want somebody who goes to different states and is known, and find him and try to get under his wings, try to learn from him, and along with the things that you learn to do, you also learn what not to do. But I think there's all these guys who, they go to their schools and then they graduate and then they kind of don't have any direction after that. I believe that, if people would find a vet, to kind of, really it's a two-way street. You help the vet out, you carry his bags, you give him rides wherever, and the vet helps you out by teaching you, and then also, when the time comes, helping you get bookings. And that's just, it's kind of how it's always been, and it's kind of, we're getting away from that, but we shouldn't. It's not something that we should let go of.
I fully agree. Mike, what would you say your next question is for Steve here?
So technology is moving at a pretty fast pace, but unfortunately we don't have a time machine. But let's say we did. If there is anyone in any part of wrestling history, of the present or the past, who would you have a dream match with as Kongo Kong?
Andre the Giant or Big Van Vick or Yokozuna.
Solid. All three solid answers. Solid.
I take it you've been asked that one before?
Yeah. And I mean, those are some of the guys that I've modeled myself after, as far as being a bigger man in a match and how to sell and, how to work and how to make myself or keep myself looking strong versus, some of these other guys who would like to go out and they take every bump for a guy who weighs 150 pounds. And those were the guys that I looked forward or looked up to, because I knew that I would be in that category, that, I'd be one of those bigger guys at some point in my life, when I grew up or whatever. So those are the guys that I modeled myself after.
My last question for you is, when it's all said and done, and when it's time for you to hang it up, and hopefully that's a very long time away from now, what is the one thing that, when people bring up Kongo Kong in conversation, what is the one thing that you want them to remember you for?
I guess as a form of being an example, my drive or unwillingness to give up or give in, because, I mean, over the last, 19 years, I've taken a hell of a lot of no's before I got, even a few yeses. So, I tell people if this is the business that they want to be in, then they can find a way and they can make themselves successful in it. They just have to be open and willing to progress, as well as be open to change. So I guess, to answer your question, I'd want people to see the things that I went through and the path that I had to take to get to where I've gotten, and to take note of that, and to themselves, hopefully never give up. If this is your dream, if this is your passion, you can do it.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty solid with me.
It's perfect for me. Colin, what's your one of your final questions?
See, yours is kind of sad. Now mine's kind of sad too. In the 20 years that you've been in the business, obviously Scott talked about having a broken jaw, and that's probably his worst injury as a wrestler. What would you say is the worst injury you've ever experienced?
Hard to say what the worst was, but I know I've encountered my fair share. I've just dislocated shoulders, broken collarbones, broken 2 bones in one hand, busted my tailbone. That was actually pretty painful because it was hard to move around the ring, but I never stopped working.
Yeah.
I think I dislocated a rib. Pretty much you name it, I've done it. And fortunately, it's all been stuff that I've been able to fight through it and never had to take any time off for it.
You can't see it, but the three of us are grimacing with every injury you say. Yeah, and tailbones really are horrible because most of them you can cast or you can wrap in some way. Tailbones, you just basically have to suck it up and deal with it. I mean, there's no real good way to... And bumps would be miserable taking any sort of bumps.
The fortunate part about being 6'6", 300 plus pounds is that I don't have to take very many bumps.
True that.
A lot of times I get put in situations to where I just tell the other guy, hey, listen, I got this going on. I'm going to need you to work with me. And they're, most times more than willing to work with me and kind of run around me and help me out.
Oh, man. Nope. Broken tailbone or anything like that, I'd be like, I'm going to need 3 weeks, so I'll be back.
All right, so my last question is, and what I've gathered from this short conversation and conversations that I've had with Scott here, you seem very professional, but I want to know is have you ever, is there been any heat inside the ring that has carried over outside of the ring, just anyone stepping on toes or anything like that, where you had to put someone in their place?
Please say Scott.
Well, there was this one time last year. I was at a show in South Bend, and I was scheduled to wrestle one of my students. But there was another kid there that the promoter wanted to try to get on the card somehow. And so he asked me, hey, can we just make this a handicap match? And, you go out there, do your thing, and, they just bump and sell for you pretty much. And I said, okay, no problem. And I went to go ask the kid, hey, how long you been wrestling? Oh, just, about a year. I said, okay, who trained you? And he named off some guy that I never heard of. That should have been my first red flag. And, I asked him what type of stuff he liked to do, and I think he said nothing that he could do to me. And I said, okay. And then we started talking out the match, and I told him I'm probably gonna go ahead and hit my finisher on you. He was like, is that the splash? Can we do something different? Because I feel like you're gonna hurt me. And I'm like, okay, no, you're gonna lay there and you're gonna take the splash, and everything's gonna be fine, just like it always is. So, we go out there and we have the match, and I let them get some stuff in. that if you go out and you make somebody look like a pile of crap, then it really doesn't do anything to help you out. So I let them get some things in, and then I put them both in a corner, and I gave them a cannonball. The first time I noticed that the other kid kind of shied away from the cannonball. He kind of got out of the corner and let my student take it by himself. Well, the crowd was yelling for one more, so I put him back in the corner, and he did the same thing again. And so I said, okay, that's fine. And I kicked my student out of the ring, told him lay down, and I told the other kid, you stay here, I'm going to give you the splash. And so I go up, and I splash him, and the referee counts 1, 2, and all of a sudden I see the shoulder come up off the ground.
Oh, shit.
And the referee looks at me like, oh my God, what the fuck did he just do?
Oh my God.
And I look at the ref and I'm like, are you serious right now? I look out my manager, he's already ready to celebrate. And he turns around, he's like, why did we stop? What happened? And this kid just decided that this was his moment. It was right around WrestleMania. And he was going to have his big moment against Kongo Kong, and he was going to kick out of Kongo Kong Splash. And, yeah, so from there, I went into shoot mode, and I put him in a $1 Million Dream / Canadian crossface or crippler crossface. And I yanked back as hard as I possibly could. And I told him, I said, if you don't tap out right now, I'm going to break your back. He tapped, and he laid there. I don't know if he was telling or just writhing in pain or what. But I then proceeded to step on him a couple times. And like the fans knew something wasn't right. They knew he wasn't supposed to kick out of my splash. And so, like, I'm trying to play it off and be cool about it because I literally wanted to play him. So I kicked him out of the ring, and my manager says, hey, do you want me to get him back in there? And I go, no, I got it. So we go to the outside, and I picked him up, and I gave him the hardest body slam I could ever give a human being on the gym floor.
Oh.
I know why he didn't.
So, huh?
I was like, I know why he didn't get up. He was trying to feel his legs.
So then I celebrated with the fans or whatever and let the rain clear out. And then I head back to his locker room, and the locker room door is open. And it was stopped by one of those little rubber stoppers. And it was so funny because one of the guys that was on the show, he saw me reach down and pull the stopper and then pull the door shut. He's like, oh, I got to go hear this. And so I go in, and I asked the kid, what in the hell were you thinking? Why on earth would you do that? And, like, he wouldn't look at me, wouldn't stare me in the face. And, you know, I asked him a couple times, what were you thinking? What was the deal? You know, and he wouldn't say anything. So I reached back, and I pulled all the way back to right field and hauled off and slapped the shit out of him. And I told him, if I ever catch you on a show, in a wrestling ring, near a wrestling ring, or anything, and I hear about it, I will kill you. I will kill you. You will be dead.
Oh,
and I said, don't get dressed. Don't take your time. Don't do anything. I want you to grab your shit and get the fuck out of my locker room. And that's exactly what he did. He left.
And you never saw him again?
I never saw him again. He surfaces every now and again, and he'll tell people that we smooth things over and everything's good now, but there's no such thing.
We know the
I
truth.
think he knows that if there's a chance that I'm on the show, that he is to not be there or not be anywhere in the area.
Oh, man, that is amazing. Colin, I think you had one more. What'd you have?
All right. Well, you mentioned coming to Indiana to do college football, and I just wanted to know, honestly, what college did you go to? We didn't actually catch that.
University of St. Francis here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And actually, they just won for the second time the NAIA National Championship.
Oh.
So I'm really proud of the Cougars, and proud to say that I was part of the first crop of people to ever be a part of the team, I guess. I came the year after their very first season, and we started winning conference championships that year. And then my last year, we went undefeated during the regular season, and then eventually lost out to the national champions of that year. So I'm very happy to say that I was part of a legacy, that got started, here in Fort Wayne with that particular team.
Wow, that's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah. I did not expect that story to go that way, but that's
That's ended it on a high. But before we go, I did want you on the podcast when I make the announcement. I don't know if you've paid attention to the indie scene recently. March 4th, our guest on the podcast is going to be Flying Brian Pillman Jr., obviously son of the legendary and late Brian Pillman. It will be a great opportunity to finally get a chance to talk to him. Steve, have you seen any of his work by chance?
I have not. I've been interested to watch it. I just, I haven't really had the time to seek him out on YouTube or anything like that. I hope with guys that come in with that type of pressure on their shoulders that, they don't succumb to, some of the same, I guess, elements that, their fathers dealt with. When you are, I guess, throttled into a position because of your name, it tends to be a bit much at times, and I wish him nothing but success and happiness, and I hope that this is what he wants to do, and is not doing it just because, his dad did it.
Yeah, he seems very passionate about professional wrestling. I'd listened to a couple of interviews that he's done. He's got a pretty good head for the business. He's taken up the mantle, and he wants to honor and finish his father's legacy. And he had a pretty good match. His first match ever was with Jonathan Wolfe, Joey Owens' son. I don't know if you've seen any of Jonathan's, but it was I didn't know if you'd seen any of Jonathan's work or not.
Yeah, I've worked with Jonathan. I've practically helped raise him.
Yeah.
He's one of those kids that have always been around the locker room, and anytime I was around kid, Jonathan was there, so he'd get his fair share of roughing up and then things done to him just like I would do to anybody else.
Yeah, if you do ever get a chance, it's definitely worth a watch. Brian's got some really good work out there, and I really hope at some point that he does reach the big one. He's got a lot of drive and passion, and hopefully wherever he ends up, whether it's Impact or WWE, I do hope that he gets somebody like you had said earlier, a good vet like yourself, to talk to him and help guide him and answer questions, because he had made a comment in one of the interviews that he did that you got to be careful in the business who you associate yourself with, because everybody views professional wrestling differently, and it's important that you, and I might be paraphrasing this a little bit, but it's important that you have a good group of people around you.
Absolutely.
But Steve, I want to thank you again for taking time out of your schedule to do our podcast with us. It truly means a lot. And ladies and gentlemen, for listening, thank you very much. Thank you for liking and subscribing on YouTube. You can follow us at Four Corners Podcast on Twitter. And you can follow Kongo Kong at Real Kongo Kong on Twitter. And make sure to watch Impact Wrestling every single Thursday on Pop TV at 8/7 Central. And I believe that should be it for this episode. Again, thank you, Steve.
Thank you guys for having me. And to the fans, continue supporting these guys. This is a good group of guys. I've had the pleasure of knowing Steve and Scott for about 10 years or more.
Yes.
And they've always been very upstanding guys, and I know that they have passion and drive for this business. They have a love that supersedes most people's, and so yeah, it's like they want to bring you the best entertainment. So I urge you guys continue supporting these guys and help them grow.
And I wouldn't like this. I wouldn't want this to be a one-off thing. I mean, we would love to have you back on later down the line. Hell, when you finally do get that Impact Championship, we'd love to talk to you about the match and how everything went down.
Just give me a buzz.
I will. And guys, thank you again. So for Colin, Mike, myself, Steve, and Zach, who unfortunately weren't able to make it today, we're going to be tagging out on this episode.
Yep. See you guys on the next episode of the Four Corners Podcast.
Thank you.